everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for joining. My name is Aisha and I'm based in London. My pronouns are she and her. So, for anyone joining, just tell me what's your name, where are you joining from, pop it in the chat. And as you can see, today I have a special guest with me, Bracken, who is the CEO of Logitech. Hi, Bracken.
Hi, how are you? Great to see you, Aisha. My pronouns, as you can see, are he and him. And I'm really happy to be on here. But I'm in California. You can see how much sunnier it is here than where Aisha is. I mean, it's like California behind me. Go there.
Well, don't rub it in. And to be fair, it's like 7:30 here. We did have some sun earlier today, so
Well,
I
okay, I'll shine that window a little bit. There we go. There we
whatever.
go. That's a real window. This is not a false background, though, Aisha. You realize this is a real deal.
Yes, I believe you. I believe you.
Okay.
Okay,
Actually, if you
so
look carefully, all of Logitech's secrets are on the wall in there. So if somebody zooms in, takes pictures, and then they could probably figure out exactly where we're going over the next 25 years. It's on that wall back right over this shoulder. I'm kidding. There's nothing there. That's a secret.
when we have Rusty. Hey, Rusty.
I hope there's nothing in there as a secret. Whoa. I better, just in case, I better. Where's
Yeah,
Nicole? I need her. She should have told
Nicole's
me.
gonna jump on and be like, "Stop."
Yeah. She's my head of corporate communications, and she's usually outstanding at making sure that I don't do something stupid like I just did. No, I'm kidding. Okay. So, well, it's great to be here, Aisha. So we're ready to talk. And it'll be fun.
Yeah. So for anyone on the live, if you have any questions, pop them in the chat. So let's get started. So Bracken, tell us something about you that's not on your resume or on your LinkedIn page.
Well, I talk about basketball constantly, but I think it somehow did not make it onto my LinkedIn page, at least. If I had a resume, it would definitely be on my resume. I am a basketball fanatic, not the watching kind, but the playing kind. So I played this morning, and you would think by how much I talk about it that I'm very good, and the caliber of players I play with, you would really think I'm good, but I am pretty good. But I love it. I'm a total fanatic. So that is not on my LinkedIn page.
Okay. So Rusty says, can you just zoom into the whiteboard on the right, please?
No. Sorry, Rusty, I'm not doing it. What I can do is tell you that if you look up in this corner, see that? Those are Dieter Rams' design principles. 10 principles of design by Dieter Rams, Braun, where I used to work, and I know Dieter, and he is a landmark designer who is kind of powerful. It's like the 10 Commandments. But he's a very powerful designer who influenced Johnny Ive and so many designers in the world today with his breakthrough in kind of less but better design.
Okay, cool. So wait, why basketball though? Did you start playing when you were younger? What got you into that?
Yeah, I played everything when I was young, but then when I was about I was 12 or 13, I guess I got hurt on the playground before football season started, thank God. And so I couldn't play football that year, and then I just played basketball, and I kind of just totally hooked from then on. And I've played ever since. I'm 29 now, and I'm still playing. And it's been amazing. And I really never. I've lived all over the world. I've never not found somewhere to play. Here I play 5-6 days a week.
Amazing.
Okay, 3 days a week. Oh, 4 days.
Yeah.
3 or 4.
Okay, cool. So how did you become the CEO of Logitech? I want to hear that story. How did you become the CEO of Logitech?
Well, I won't walk through my whole career because you'd be bored to death. But that is on my LinkedIn page. But I guess the way I really got here was because one of the jobs I had, I was living in Germany. I was running Braun. That Dieter, I'm getting left and right now. Dieter Rams' design principle. So I was running Braun globally, and it's a global company based in Europe with a long history that's about innovation. And when they were looking for a new CEO of Logitech, which is a tech company, Braun's kind of in a little bit of consumer electronics, but mostly shavers and epilators and personal care devices and things. I think they liked the fact that I'd run a company that was a European company. We're headquartered in Switzerland. CEOs always sat in California. And they liked that it was I think they liked that it was centered in design. And so that's kind of how I got it. I mean, my path through it was somewhat like everybody's got a story. I was an English major in college, and then I took enough accounting and economics, so I became the only auditor in the United States that was an English major, I think. Therefore, I was not a particularly good auditor, but I survived, and I did that for 4 years. Then I went back to business school and went to Procter and Gamble and went to GE after that. Then Gillette, ran Braun, and then went to Whirlpool. Spent 4 years at Whirlpool in Europe, and then came here. And I spent 8 years in Europe before I moved to California.
I love that. Love that. Okay, so deeper question then. What do you think a lot of CEOs struggle to understand about being an ally?
Being an ally.
Hmm.
Well, I think first of all, I think a lot of CEOs are starting to really get it. I think if you asked me that question pre George Floyd, I would have given a pretty terrible answer. I think most CEOs, unfortunately for the world, most American CEOs at least, are white older men like me, and so they don't have the direct experience of being a marginalized group. So they've
Hmm.
never lived in the anything but the privileged world of being the group that's had the control, and so I think it's a built-in systemic DNA centered disadvantage for allyship that you have to work to overcome, and the only way out of it is by learning and listening and empathizing and experiencing the other side as much as you possibly can.
Hmm. And what sort of helped you to be able to do that? Because the main reason I actually reached out to you on LinkedIn, this was like a year ago. So for everyone, the backstory, I think I came across one of your piece articles that you wrote on LinkedIn, and I was like, oh, this is after all the protests. You're still talking about this, and it just seemed authentic. It seemed genuine. So why do you think that you've sort of been able to keep it front of mind? Because a lot of companies made commitments and so on, and they've sort of fallen away. So what for you makes you keep it front of mind?
First, I just want to say we have so far to go to be anything close to acceptable or
Hmm.
and certainly great in the area of inclusivity and being a really diverse company. We have a long way to go. We're making good steps, but we have a long way to go. Um, but you're right that it's still top of mind for me and top of the priority list. And I'll tell this story. Will take 3 or 4 minutes to tell, but I'll tell it. When George Floyd was murdered, I'm 59 years old, and I remembered Rodney King. And about 3 or 4 days after that, we were in the middle of the pandemic. I was sitting at my dining room table or kitchen table where I'd work, and I was thinking, God, and I started to think about poor George Floyd. I thought, how in the world is this still happening? It's like I remember Rodney King, and it felt like that was like so public, just like Rodney King's murder. And for those of your audience who don't know, Rodney King was not murdered, but he was brutally beat up in the street by a group of policemen, and like broad daylight, like this one. It was all on video. And anyway, I was like, how did that happen? And then it started making me think about, well, because there's kind of a vacuum at the top. Nobody was talking about it. No politicians, the president wasn't talking. Nobody was talking about George Floyd's murder. And then I started thinking, about apartheid in South Africa. And I thought, well, God, I wonder when that happened, if there was nobody in the top talking. There must have been some of the leaders who were white who were good people instead of. And then it really hit me. Wow, I haven't been talking about any of this in the entire time
Mm.
I've been CEO. I've never talked about uh, racism. I've never talked about systemic racism. I've never talked about police brutality, injustice, none of or just all the things that are happening. And it was like getting hit in the head with a frying pan, and it never stopped hurting. And from that moment, I really changed my whole life. I don't think I'm exaggerating. I think it was the most transformative in my life. And I looked at everything. I called all my friends who were black, and I said, and I apologized. And it was really interesting because I had a lot of friends, and it was really interesting. They were all like, nobody said, "Well, it's okay." They all said, "Well, at least you're getting it now." And And so I changed everything in my life from the angel investments I was making to the inside the company. We built a plan, full transparency. I just really went after it, and I'm still on fire for this. I think it's so important. I was with a group called Black Women on Boards yesterday for 4 hours, and I'm just amazed at the talent and the resilience, the persistence of all the marginalized groups out there who have had to, kind of, not just climb over walls to get to where they are, but sometimes break through them, sometimes be blocked by them. But I'm just am so impressed by it. And, it's made some incredibly strong people out there and talent. And so I'm really excited about the talent. I'm an absolute, I'm addicted to potential, and I see so much potential,
Mhm.
and it's going to be good for everybody.
Definitely, definitely. I want to touch on a couple of things you've pointed out, but Masika, in terms of the article, so just go to Bracken's page. So his name is up on the screen. Go to his LinkedIn page, check his posts under his articles. You'll see all the things he's written about anti-racism and all of it, and just follow him in general. I love seeing his posts. And okay, we've got a question from Rusty. So Rusty is asking you, Bracken, how can those who see and believe the point of view you are sharing more effectively influence other white male leaders who either don't believe the point of view or are reluctant or too lazy to engage? Ooh, that's a deep one. I'm glad it's not my question.
It's a hard question. I think that maybe the and I'm probably not qualified to answer how can others in general. I can throw out an opinion like anybody else. I can tell you how I can, and that's by being vocal and being active and never stopping and being very, very persistent about it and talking directly to my peers and trying to be an example, at least an outspoken example of what I believe is the right thing to do. And then most important of all, keep learning. During since George Floyd's murder, I've gone through phases where I've learned so much, and I reached the point where I think, I'm kind of getting this now. I'm like, I think I'm 80% of the way there, and then my head pokes through the ceiling, and I look up and I realize, there's a gymnasium above me of knowledge that I don't know, and I have so much to learn. And I think that's always going to be true, because there's just more and more to learn about this topic. I I started learning about the trans world, and how incredibly difficult their lives have been. And then, of course, with women in general, it's been brutal, and Me Too was the first, like, momentous event, but boy, that's not over. I mean, there's so far to go. So it's just Latinx. I mean, I feel like that's the group. Asian hate. I think each of these, LGBTQ in general, each of these groups have had these bursts of you know of knowledge that have come on the scene. Very few of us have just become expert. Fortunately, there are experts out there like Aisha and you and so many others, and we need a long-term curriculum. You need a mindset that this is a lifelong learning program, and learn as fast as you can, but realize you're going to keep learning.
Yep. And the other thing that I really liked when you described some of the actions that you took, so you said you looked at some of your investments, right? This is what I always say to people, look at the things you're already currently doing, right? So look at your investments. Where is that going? Look at who you're donating to in terms of charities. Can you
Yeah,
donate to some other
yeah,
organizations? In terms of the content you're consuming, right? Because like social media, like constantly, that's a way that you can learn what type of people are you following on social media. Follow different people from different types of communities, and there you go, you can learn so much from them. And the other thing as well is even Netflix, Prime Video, what are you consuming in terms of what you're watching?
yeah.
If everything that you're
You said it
watching
all.
is very like white centered, then whatever you put into your brain, that's what's going to be in there, right? But if you diversify the content that you're consuming, and there's so much power in film, so films, TV shows, a lot of it is people sharing. Some of the writers are sharing things that have happened to them, things that have happened to their friends. So it just expands your mind, right?
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, there's so much great content to watch now that you could really be overwhelmed. But it's hard to get people to stretch out into content that they don't normally watch. To understand it. But it's always rewarding. I mean, we can start talking about movies like Moonlight. Was it Moonlight? but there have been so many amazing movies that come out that are by the marginalized director world and then actor world. They're just blooming now because there is a lot more places to get your content out there. So it's super exciting. And I'll go to the angel investing thing in particular because it's a good illustrative example of the problem, and maybe one way to attack it. The problem is I'm not. I don't think I didn't think that I was an overt racist at all, and I'm not. And I never have been. I grew up in a super progressive family. We were the first people to have a billboard in our front yard for Richard Brown, who was the first black person ever to run for city council in our city. And we were I mean, my parents were like super progressive people. But what I discovered was how systemic racism works its way through everything. When I started doing angel investing, I moved out to Silicon Valley 10 years ago, and I love this thriving founder scene here, and I really wanted to understand it because I didn't know it. I moved here from Europe, and I was like, "Wow, this is so cool!" Every day I would meet with between 3 founders a day and 3 founders a week. I probably met thousands, and sometimes people would ask me to invest, and I always used my judgment was always, do I think the person has a spark, really and is really a passion for something, and then is the area seem okay? I didn't even try to overanalyze it, and I ended up with a bunch of sorry, my Siri's popping up and saying hello. I ended up with a bunch of angel investments, and after George Floyd, when I took an inventory of my life, I was like, well, let's look how I'm doing, and I was so I had one male black entrepreneur as an investee in probably 25 investments, one of
Wow.
25, and he was a friend of my son's. Yet I had a lot of friends who were black, and some of them were entrepreneurs. Now, why in the so I was like, what happened there? And I think it's because my network looked like me,
Mm.
they were more of a reflection of me. So I speak Spanish, so I had several Latinx, probably 4 or 5, maybe more, 6. It was probably 50-50 women and men. But in terms of black entrepreneurs, they weren't coming to me. So I started going to them, and I used LinkedIn. And I would go out and I just started looking on LinkedIn, just cruising for creators and entrepreneurs, and I started making investments, and I've done it ever since. And probably 80% of the investments I've made since have been to marginalized groups. Probably 80% to black entrepreneurs, men and women. And there's so much opportunity out there. I mean, I don't invest really for the money. I invest because I believe in somebody. I love potential. But I have to say, if I were investing for the money, that's the place to go. I mean, the talent pool's there. They're still not getting the funding they need. I've invested now in 4 venture funds. I never did that before, but I did it to get my investment to marginalized groups. I invest in Fearless Fund, which only invests in black women entrepreneurs. Artemis, which only invests in women. Concrete Rose, which is all about marginalized groups and really being investment for purpose, and others. It's just so exciting and rewarding, but there's not enough of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you've touched on a lot of stuff to do with money there. I think it's super important. And, as you said, there's also that whole thing around the intersection. So, like, yes, investing in Black women as well, because obviously there's the double bind of like being Black and also being a woman as well. So, I think it's
Yeah,
really cool. And also, as you said, being proactive, right? And I think that whole thing about being proactive and reaching out can be applied to so many different things. It's the same with recruitment, right? All the time, I hear recruiters say things like, oh, the candidates aren't applying. How do we get them to apply? I'm like, go to them. You can't sit and
yeah.
wait for
Seek them
them
out.
to come to you. You have to go to them.
It's funny you said that. When I was running Brawl, I was living in Germany, and I head of engineering. I hope he's not listening. I don't care if he's listening. Hello, but he's out there somewhere. But anyway, he would. I said we had like 10% women as engineers, and I said, why? Why are we so terrible? How do we fix this? And he said, well, there's only 10% of the engineering in the engineering schools for mechanical engineering are women. And I said, well, that is a bummer. So I kind of took that at face value first. Then a few days later, I was talking to somebody about that, and they said, oh, did he tell you his daughter's a mechanical engineer? I said, no. I said, so he certainly should know how to fix this for us. So I called him back and went down to his office. I said, well, I didn't realize your daughter's a mechanical engineer. I mean, so how do we do this? And he said, well, it's only Bracken. She's one of 10. It's 10% of the students in these schools are in mechanical engineering. And I started thinking, I thought, wait a minute. I said, we need about 14, and there are 450,000 or something like that, or say 150,000 graduating every year, and that means 1.5 million that have graduated in the last 10 years, and we can't get 14?
Mhm. Mhm.
14? So
Mhm.
these are excuses. They're just excuses, and you got to have goal targets, and your reward system needs to be tied to it, and then you got to get the results.
Yeah, you know what? When I used to work in tech, when people would say, "Oh, there's a pipeline issue," I was like, "Okay, maybe there's something to it." But then I joined a different industry, and they were saying the same thing. So I was like, "Hold on a minute, this
Yeah,
it can't be
wait
a
a minute.
pipeline issue."
Not everybody. You may not get the market share of the people out there, but not everybody can be not getting the market share of the people out there. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and my brother works for a startup, and
yeah,
the founders are all women. And on the tech team, in terms of ethnic diversity, they've got it. In terms of gender diversity, I think it's like 60-40 or something. So there are companies that are doing it. So whenever people say, "Oh, we just can't find it," I'm like, "Where are you looking?" is the question.
yeah.
Where are you
So
looking?
true.
And also, who to you is the ideal candidate, right? Because sometimes that's the problem. You basically want a unicorn, and that person doesn't even exist.
Yeah, or or you say, okay, I need 10 years of work experience and a master's degree, and somebody went to an Ivy League school and has lived in 4 countries and speaks 17 languages. To your point, you can job spec your way out of being available to people that you really want. We stopped using years of work experience. We just dropped it. We also dropped degrees. Once in a
Mhm.
while, I'm sure they creep back into our job specs. If you see it in one of our job specs, send it to me. I will go make sure that it reminds all of our teams that we're not doing that anymore, because they're just unnecessary blockers. They don't give you a sense of what somebody can do or has done. They're just unfair.
Mm-hmm. Yep, totally agree. Okay, so for folks on the live, don't forget, pop your questions in the chat. We'll take them as we go along. Don't wait till the end because we might run out of time. So just pop your questions in the chat. Okay, I've got
Masika,
two
it
more.
sounds like Masika is an entrepreneur. So she said, well, then maybe we should chat. Okay, so
Oh,
maybe we should chat.
yes.
Okay,
Yes,
good,
Masika, reach out to
great.
Bracken. He's super responsive on LinkedIn. So message, message, message. Shoot your shot. That's my
Yep.
basketball reference.
Very good. That's impressive. I'm more of a
Okay.
passer and a defensive player, but that's good.
Okay, so Bracken, how would you describe pay equity?
Pay equity is being paid fairly, that means you ought to be paid. Everybody ought to be paid for the same jobs. You ought to be paid the same way, and
Mhm.
so that's what pay equity is. I mean, it's everybody should be equitably paid, equally paid. What happens in the world? It doesn't work that way. So the
Mhm.
way this world works is this world, kind of the business world. Increasingly there's pressure to make sure that there's equity in pay because it should be illegal not to pay, and probably it is somewhere. So what happens is I hope there are no law firms that come after me after I make this comment. But so what used to happen was we meaning business companies, et cetera, would say, gosh, how do we understand our pay equity thing? So then we'd go to our law firms and we'd say, hey, can you help us demonstrate whether we're equitably paying people based on job experience, with all that stuff. And of course, law firms are there to defend you. They're not usually out to get you. So what they would do when they're doing their jobs is they would go through your data and they would find how you're doing it. And then, but you can look at data different ways. You can put this group with that group, and they weren't trying to manipulate anything, but they're biased. They're biased towards you. So they would lean in the direction. I'll lean in the other way. Lean over towards Dieter Rump. Lean in the direction of the company, and you look pretty good, and you felt good, and then you could say, hey, our law firm audited us. We're equitably paying, and we may have a few corrections. That's not very good. Okay, so what the solution now? I think the solution is a company called Syndio, and I am not an investor in Syndio, and I do know the CEO, and I'm a big believer. And what they do is they basically take all your systems, all your data, and then they tell you if you're paying equitably. They have a big engine, a big machine that they go through and they pop it out, and you get an answer, and you see where you're not paying equitably, and then you have to go investigate those things. Say, why are we not paying equitably there? Sometimes there are good reasons based on their algorithms because it's something somebody's brand new to the job or whatever, but And so we did it. We were not paying equity. I can't remember what the number was. It was like we have 6,000 people coming, 360 jobs. I think in the past we do it, we'd be like, we have, a few jobs where we're not, and you'd have to go correct those. But that's a big number. And then we went through and investigated each one of them. And we made corrections on a lot of them. And I think Syndio is the answer. Maybe there's an alternative to Syndio. Sorry, Maria, if you're out there somewhere listening. I don't know it though. I think Syndio is the biggest and the best from what I understand.
And does it sort of give you the real-time data? So like every time you hire someone, you can pop in the
Yes.
salary and then it tells you
Uh,
all of
uh,
that.
Absolutely. It's a great question because I don't know anybody getting that. And that is one of the advantages. It's like I know my CHRO, or we call her head of people culture, Kirsty Russell, she always talks about that. It's like, wow, it's really cool because you don't drift apart during the year and then come back and correct. Because it's always changing. The world's always changing. So every time you hire somebody, you pay somebody else something, and
Hmm.
it changes the skew. So they have real-time data all the time.
Yeah. And I think part of the reason people are scared to do things like that is, for example, you know how you talked about removing the requirement for years of experience and things like that. A lot of people are still paying people based on the number of years of experience rather than what they bring to the role and their impact and so on. So I think that also makes people a bit scared about using tools like that.
It's let's not try to oversimplify this. This is a very complex thing. How
Hmm.
one of the challenges is people default to proxies. That's
Hmm.
why um, that's why Harvard Business School and Stanford probably do so well in the United States for consulting because the consulting firms go to Harvard and Stanford
Hmm.
and they over recruit there because Harvard and Stanford already did a selection process that was pretty rigorous. And so, hey, if they pass through that process, then if we go through it and take them through our filter, then so it saves them time and money. And I think that's the problem with things like years of experience. You say, well, if somebody has 10 years of experience in software engineering, that's some kind of a filter. And so that means they probably have had a bunch. It's not, but it doesn't really answer the question. You need to say, okay, what experiences do you need to be able to do this job? What skills do you need to be able to do this job? There are experiences and skills you need to do many jobs. What are they? Not how many years have you been doing a job?
Hmm. Yeah, also the problem with that is someone may have been doing a job for 10 years, but someone may have been doing a job for 2 years and achieved much more than the person who's been doing it in the 10 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
You know, and I'd say it goes both ways. I think there's the newcomer's advantage to somebody who's never done anything who takes a fresh eye. That's Einstein won the Nobel. Einstein discovered the theory of relativity in his 20s. There's also the uh, the advantage of the older person who has seen a lot and has a lot of
Hmm.
wisdom. You know, there's the advantage of the person who's been through hell in their life, who's
Hmm.
probably had mental health issues and had big financial issues, and maybe no parents at home or one parent at home, and they have an advantage. So there are advantages that come from everything. There are disadvantages that come from almost everything. And I think if you really focus on uh, really just trying to look at what you think you need the skills are, and then making sure you've really got a diverse population of people in your company, because then you get all those advantages, and they all come together and they actually multiply.
Yeah. As Masika says, there's value in the lived experience. Totally agree with that.
There really
All
is,
right.
yeah.
All right, we've got less than a minute left, so if anyone has questions, pop them in the chat. But Bracken, okay, so let's say there's a CEO watching this thinking, oh my goodness, I don't think we're paying equitably. Ooh, and also in terms of all this allyship and DEI stuff, I'm still a bit funny about it. What would you say to them? Like one to like three things that you'd say to them. What would you
You
say to
have to pay equitably. Okay, so if you
them?
don't know if you're paying equitably, you're not. So
Mhm.
immediately call me. You can email me, connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can go directly to Syndio, syndio.com, syndio.com. Maria Coluccio is the CEO. Reach out to them. And then if there are alternatives, find alternatives to them and test them against each other. Probably you're going to end up with Syndio. But I would do that. It's a sin, and I'd have a sense of urgency about it, because if you don't know if you're paying equitably, you're behind, and you're not.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna steal that. I'll probably post that next week. Okay, cool.
Okay, good.
Anything else you want to say to the people, Bracken?
No, no, it's been really great knowing you, Aisha, and talking to you. And
Oh,
I'm super excited about what you're doing, and I hope a lot of people watch this, and if they don't, it's okay. I'll be talking about it a lot, as much as anybody will listen.
oh, Masika has a question for you. She says, "What would you say if one of your CEO buddies said to you, all this allyship DEI stuff is nonsense?"
I think you don't get it. You really don't get it. You're a dinosaur if you're still thinking that way. And when I hear people say things like that, I just think this is just so ridiculous. It's a huge deal. It's uh, maybe the one of the two biggest issues in people today. This DE and I in general,
Mhm.
DEI and J, in general, and mental health. Those two issues. If yeah, I was at a dinner last night with I hope I can say this, but with Ariana Huffington and with a group of CHROs, and Ariana Huffington was so interesting. She said, I think there's a sea change going on, and here it is. We used to, and now this is my paraphrase of that sea change. We used to spend all our money on making products for users and customers, and then we'd have all the things that went into making those products were or whatever the raw materials were, and these other things called human resources. And I think what we're now realizing is actually we need to be create experience for those humans in the business. And if we do a great job of that and we unlock their passions, their potential, they're going to create amazing things for those customers. And I think CEOs are really starting to get it. And the next crop of CEOs are really going to get it. The more
Mhm.
women there, the more people of color, the more marginalized groups who are in the CEO chair you're going to have. But CEOs increasingly sound more like people, heads of CHROs, which is I'm stealing her quote, but I agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good way to end things. All right,
Great,
thank you so much, Bracken, and thanks
thank
everyone
you,
for
Aisha.
joining as well.
Thank you so much, Masika. I'm sure you connect with me on LinkedIn to explain to me why I must invest my small amount of money in your company. And anybody feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thank you,
Bracken.
Aisha.
Have a good weekend.
To you all. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye bye.